Every now and then you get that snap picture of just how small the world really is. It's one of those times when you're halfway across the world and recognize a guy from the gym, or you spot your childhood crush ahead of you in the line at the DMV. I've moved a lot and lived a lot, and these things happen to me every now and then. So when it does happen, I don't always think much of it. Until not too long ago, I lived in a small townhouse. I worked as a shift manager at a component factory in northern Pennsylvania, not too far from Pittsburgh. It wasn't anything fancy, mostly compartments and storage for snowmobiles and tractors. Honest work, but it took quite the drive to get there, almost 50 minutes by car, one way. But I had a great place. It wasn't big space-wise, but there was a great open floor plan that made the place feel 3 times bigger than it actually was. 2 floors, 2 bathrooms, 2 bedrooms, and a living room with an adjoining kitchenette. Perfect for a bachelor or a small family. The only problem was the bedroom door, which could jam if I closed it too hard. I was coming back from a bad breakup. My ex and I had been talking about moving in together, but we just couldn't make it work. She had these anxieties that kept her from really committing, and she ended up second-guessing herself to the point where I was no longer a part of the conversation. After a while, we simply had to accept that she had no idea what she wanted, but she wasn't in a place to be with me either way. I accepted a transfer up north, along with the promotion, and wished her the best. I'd been living up there for about a year when, one morning, I noticed someone moving in across the street. It was nice not to be the newest guy on the block anymore. I only saw glimpses of the owner. There was a woman standing outside on the lawn, pointing at 2 movers and trying to direct them, with a voice that could barely be heard outside her own head. It was like watching someone trying to tow a car with a rubber band. By the time I got back home that night, there was still furniture on her lawn. I decided to be the good neighbour and head over, see if she needed any help. She was doing her best to tip and angle a 3-seat couch by the time I got there. She wasn't making it through the door on her own. I waved at her. "Excuse me," I said. "You need any help?" "It's fine," she said. "Thank you, really." "You sure?" "Looks like you need to angle it and pull sideways. That's a rough one-man job." She rolled her eyes and let out a sigh. She nodded in quiet resignation, and less than a minute later, the couch was on its way through the living room. It's always a bit eerie to move into a new place. Everything looks so barren that you can hardly imagine it being a space where people lived and breathed and laughed. For the time being, this woman's life was all boxes and bare floors. Every step echoed off the walls. I helped her with a couple of boxes before she let her guard down. She had this short brown hair that sort of clung to her sweaty face, and these deep pockets under her eyes. I could tell she hadn't been sleeping a lot. There was a shake in her hands that showed she'd either been skipping meals or was deathly nervous. After carrying in some of her kitchenware, she stopped me at the door and forced a smile. "Sorry," she said. "I'm Julie." I introduced myself, shaking her hand. She was definitely trembling. "The movers screwed you, huh?" "Yeah, they were only paid to dump it all on my lawn, it seems." "Sorry to hear that. Looks like you're almost done, though." "Yeah, but the unpacking's gonna take a couple days, but it's nice to get settled." There was something about her voice that seemed familiar. An accent. It reminded me of my own. Then it just kinda clicked. I knew this woman. Julie and I had gone to the same school. I hadn't recognized her. She used to be the tallest girl in class. Then she'd just sort of stopped growing, while the others kept going, making her the shortest girl in class over the course of about 2 years. Now that I thought about it, it had to be her. It was obvious. I'd had enough of a crush on her not to forget that face anytime soon. The moment I recognized her, It was like she recognized me in turn. She let out a huff and looked me up and down. "I can't believe it," she laughed. "What are the odds? Julie, you wanted to be a teacher, right?" "Yup," she nodded. "And I am." "And you had these apple earrings," I said, gesturing. They were the size of golf balls. She couldn't hold back a snort and stepped away, crossing her arms. "You went out with James," I added. "Man, haven't seen him in years." Her smile froze in place. She nodded, rubbing her shoulder in a self-hug. I noticed she had a wedding ring. "Yeah," she said. "Good times." She excused herself and thanked me for the help. She offered me a 20 for the trouble, but I waved it off. She insisted, but I'd made my mind up. She ushered me out the door. "I gotta check on Danny," she said. She'd been awfully quiet. "You got a kid in there?" "Yeah, my girl Danny." She smiled. 4 years old. She's in her room. She's had a rough day. "Well, tell her I said welcome to the neighbourhood, and feel free to drop by sometime." "I'll do that." I wandered off, only to stop halfway across the lawn. I looked back, only to see her still leaning against the doorway. "You still got those apple earrings?" I asked. "No," she said, shaking her head. "Times change." It was a stupid question, but I couldn't help myself. I waved goodbye, and that was that. I caught myself glancing out the living room window a couple of times before I headed to bed that night. I could see Julie in her window, putting up decorations. A couple of framed pictures, curtains, a couple of lamps and candles, and finally, a pot housing a tall, blue sunflower. Unusual. I'd had a huge crush on Julie in high school. I'd thought about asking her to prom, but James got there first. I ended up going with Margie H., who was more interested in using me as a dress-up doll rather than a boyfriend. There was a lot of "do this, it's cute," and "don't do that, it looks weird." She ended up spending most of the night with her friends across the room. James and Julie, on the other hand, only had eyes for each other, slow dancing under the disco ball to all the greatest hits of the 90s. But there seemed to be no James around anymore. Perhaps it was just like she'd said, times change. But looking back at that night, I couldn't imagine the two of them apart. Not for a moment. I tried not to bother Julie and her daughter for a couple of days. I thought about heading over to say hi someday, but I figured they needed some time to get settled. I was probably overthinking it, but I didn't want to give a bad impression right off the bat. It's one thing to be helpful. It's another thing entirely to be creepy about it. And you don't want to mess things up with someone you're going to see across the street for years, maybe decades to come. I wondered about her daughter, Danny. I was yet to actually see her. I had to leave for work so early that I'd never duly take her to daycare. And by the time I got off work, they'd already come back home. Julie wasn't letting her play in the front yard. Then again, maybe that was by design. You don't want your 4-year-old to run amok near a busy road. So I tried to keep my curious eyes to myself and focus on my own life. But after months of empty inboxes and being ghosted on apps, you start to cling to whatever light in the dark you can spot. And I couldn't help but to think that maybe a light had moved in just across the street. One day, as I came home and browsed my mail, I noticed a letter addressed to Julie. She had a different last name. It took me a while to connect the dots. She had James' last name. Given how she had a wedding ring, I couldn't help but consider that maybe they were still together. Either way, I had a misplaced letter to deliver. I made my way across the road and knocked. Julie opened, holding a phone to her ear. talking to someone. I handed her the letter in silence, and she rolled her eyes apologetically at me. She wasn't in a very enthusing conversation on her phone, apparently. She mouthed, "Thank you," back at me. As I turned to leave, she put her phone down for a second. "Hey, would you mind helping me with something?" I turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "I need some help with Danny's room. I'm useless with electronics." "I'll give it a go, sure." "Thank you so much. Drop by tomorrow around 7 if you can, alright?" "Tomorrow, 7. Got it." She put her phone back to her ear and waved goodbye. I just stood there for a couple of seconds trying to catch a glimpse of her through the window, but the only thing I could see was that blue sunflower of hers. The thing was tall, and it always seemed to be turned your way, no matter where you looked. It was downright creepy. The next day I went over to see Julie. My heart was thumping away in my chest a little harder than usual. I was trying to keep it cool and not get my hopes up, but there's something about an old crush that just taps at your heartstrings. I knocked on the door, peeking at the window. The sunflower was still there, and I could have sworn it was still turned towards me, even as I stood by the front door. Julie opened the door with a tired smile. She had this pink blouse with white lilies and a pair of slightly too big jeans. She had some makeup on, I noticed. "Just got back from work," she said. "Come on in." She'd done a lot to the place. Pictures of her and James on the wall. All carpets were out. Birthday cards on the fridge. Guest towels in the downstairs bathroom. She'd put in some work. "You've been busy," I said. "Is Danny doing okay?" "Oh yeah, better than me, that's for sure." I looked over the wall of framed pictures. Julie and James at the Grand Canyon. Julie and James dressed up for Halloween. Julie and James at their wedding. James' light hair was a nice contrast to Julie's dark mahogany. "I don't see any pictures of Danny." "There used to be plenty," Julie said. "These are the only ones we could keep." "Sorry to hear that." I looked at Julie, who nodded her head matter-of-factly. I could tell I'd struck a nerve. She showed me upstairs and to the left. She was yet to put up any lights, so the corridor was a bit darker. There were these big yellow letters on the wall leading up to Danny's room. She must have painted them by hand. "Little Lady Sunflower," I read out loud. I call her that all the time. The first time I said it, I had this cold, so it came out as little, not little, and it just kind of stuck. Now that's cute. Well, the little lady is with her aunt tonight, so she won't mind us stomping into her holy kingdom. Danny's room was as classically girly as girly things get. A well-made pink bed, pink curtains with white stripes, toys and dolls and stuffed animals, picture books with horses and nature and cute animals. It was all very neat, though. Either Danny was the most organised 4-year-old in the world, or Julie had taken some time to clean up before I got there. There were a lot of little things to go through. Julie needed help running an Ethernet cable along the wall. It took some time to set up, but it felt nice doing something with my hands. Then she had me change a couple of lights that she couldn't reach. I didn't ask her about it, but I found it strange that she wanted UV lights in her kid's bedroom. Julie brought out a couple of boxes, the final items on the agenda. Cameras. "It's just been me and Danny for a while now," she explained. "I get nervous." "Hey, you're the parent. Ain't no shame in being careful." "I'm glad you understand." She had me set up 2 cameras in the bedroom, one overlooking the hallway and one overlooking the bedroom window. I helped her set up the Wi-Fi and showed her how to access the feed and recordings. It was simple stuff, but not very high quality. Having helped her out, she made me coffee and sat down to have a chat in the kitchen. We talked about old friends and memories, reminiscing about the times we'd talked as kids. But I could tell she was holding something back. Every now and then, she would completely shut the conversation down, instead focusing on the cup she cradled between her hands. Then, after a sip or two, she changed the subject. Finally, I just had to ask. "I'm sorry to bring this up, but I gotta ask about James," I said. "I see him on the pictures, and you're wearing the ring." Oh. She snapped to attention, shaking her head. "Right, of course. I'm sorry. I thought everyone heard about the fire." I was halfway through an apology when she shushed me. "No, it's fine, really. It's been months." She told me about the fire. They'd lost their home some time ago. This was the reason she didn't have that many things to put on the walls. Most of it was lost, along with James himself. "I didn't even know he was still in the house," Julie said, trying to keep a brave face. "I thought he was in the backyard, waving in the firefighters. I was out front with Danny." "I'm so sorry, Julie. Feels strange to say it out loud. But that's what happened. It's gotta be tough on Danny. Poor thing." Julie put her hand on mine and took a deep breath. "Thank you," she said. "You've been a great help." "That's what old friends are for." "Right," she smiled. "Friends." We said our goodbyes, and I watched her close the front door. I could hear her wander back upstairs. It was dark outside, only briefly interrupted by the occasional passing car. People coming and going, paying no attention to the love-struck man gawking at the widow's front door. I snapped out of it, giving it one last look before I called it a night. The blue sunflower was still there, in the window. I couldn't help but to wonder. Out of all the things she managed to save from that house, why did she save a houseplant? Her own husband hadn't made it out. How come the flower did? As I walked back across the street, a curious thought struck me. The camera that was angled at the window could probably see across the street. She could see me right now. Why do you need a camera for the second floor window anyway? Especially for a window that can't be opened. Wouldn't it be better to have one by the front door? Over the next few days, I met Julie a couple of times. I came over with a bottle of red wine as a late housewarming gift, and she came over with some leftovers. She made this mouth-watering sausage stroganoff that kept your stomach warm all day. She also made her own snacks, like peanuts and sunflower seeds, lightly salted and honey roasted to perfection. After a few weeks, it was rare for me to go a full day without seeing her. And yet, I hadn't met her daughter. Danny was always busy with something. Sleepover at a friend's house, staying with her aunt across town, going to bed early. There was always something, and I was yet to see a picture of her. I asked Julie if she could show me her phone once, and she promised she would. But she would change the subject and forget shortly after. But it was hard to be suspicious, and even harder to care. Julie was getting comfortable in that house, and it showed. There was a glow coming back to her. One day after work, there was a knock on the door, a longer one than usual, slower. Julie was standing there with one of my phone bills. The mailman had messed up again, and I reminded myself that I had to have a chat with them about it. Then again, I didn't mind the inconvenience of having Julie over every now and then. At first, I thought she was just coming over in a rush, but there was something to her demeanour that was different. She crossed her arms, but she wasn't reserved. It looked casual. "Did you enjoy the snacks I brought?" she asked. "Danny loves the roasted ones. I'm a sucker for salty stuff." "What about sweets?" I thought about it, nodding as I made a mental list. "Depends on the sweet." She grinned at me. "I'm kinda sweet." It didn't take much more than a wink and a giggle for us to end up kissing. We made out on the couch as I fumbled for the remote control. I couldn't get in the mood with a Judge Judy rerun going ooh and ah in the background. Finally, as we made ourselves comfortable, I could let my heart go. Julie had this wonderful lavender shampoo that filled my senses, but there was something strange about her kisses. They had an almost chemical taste to them, like a tinge of ammonia. Maybe she just had a weird toothpaste. Somewhere in the awkward fumble of eager hands and skin touching skin, a whisper reached the back of my ear. "I've missed you," she mumbled. "I've missed you so much." I didn't know what to make of it. I think I tried to rationalize it as her wanting to be with me for a while, or perhaps she really enjoyed our time back in high school. Then, another whisper. "I've missed you, James." There was an awkward pause. We tried to laugh it off. She shook her head, taking a deep breath. She tasted the words for a second and leaned in close. "Danny is with her grandma." I expected her to say something. Excuse herself, perhaps. But there was a trauma there, and we were both consenting adults. Mistakes were bound to happen. One thing would lead to another, and Julie didn't go home that night. I don't blame myself. I was lonely and stupid. Even before she moved in across the street, Julie had always been a bit of a girl next door in my mind. In one way, this was a dream coming true. But in another way, it just felt wrong. Nothing we did that night felt as true and honest as that one mistake she'd whispered into my ear. "I've missed you, James." The next morning, I woke up in a daze. It felt like I'd had too much to drink, but without the headache. The world felt draped in cellophane. I woke up in my room, alone. Julie was lucky she got out of the bedroom at all. I'd slammed that door pretty hard, and the lock was finicky. Maybe she had a knack for it. I could hear noises coming from downstairs, so I threw on some boxers and a bathrobe and wandered into the hall. I could hear Julie as she moved around some plates and glasses, and she was singing this tune, like something from a commercial. "You're my friend, I'll sing your tune. Setting sun to rising moon. I ask you, buddy blue, won't you be a sunflower too?" It was strange. I'd never heard that song before, and yet I knew the lyrics. I wandered down the stairs as Julie waved me to the table. She'd made grilled cheese sandwiches. I sat down by the table as she gave me a peck on the cheek. She handed me a plate and sat down next to me, cheerful as ever. "I made your favourite," she said. I didn't know this was my favourite. I smiled back. "Haven't tried it yet." I picked it up and held it. Then, something cold ran down my spine. These weren't my plates, and these weren't my glasses. She'd served orange juice, but I didn't have any in my fridge. This wasn't my kitchen. These weren't my windows. Not my chairs, not my tablecloth, not my house. Julie looked different. My hands looked different, and as I was about to take a bite, this escalating pulse deafened me in my right ear, as a radiating warmth burst through in waves. My heart was terrified, long before my mind was. And as my instincts screamed at me to run, I instead turned to my right, to the third chair at the dinner table. A voice spoke to me. It cut through the cellophane of my mind. It wasn't loud, but it enveloped my ears. The vibration didn't come through sound, but through a pulsating warmth rattling my inner ear. A droning creak. More clicking than voice. Like someone smacking their lips and tongue into clicking little words. "It's your favourite, Daddy." I dropped my plate. I was sitting in my kitchen, alone. No Julie, no one to my right. Just my dinner table, across the room from my kitchenette. The clock on my wall showed that I had another 40 minutes before I had to go to work. I couldn't hear anything. It was like my ears had popped from pressure, and no matter how much I squirmed and turned, it didn't pop back. I put my finger in my ear and felt a blockage. I turned my head to the right and scratched, only to sense this mounting pressure on my eardrum. I had to resort to using a toothpick to open my ear up. When I did, dirt poured out of my ear canal and onto the dinner table. It was a lot. I sat there for a moment, catching my breath. Julie had left a sticky note on the front door. "Had to get up for Danny," it read. "Talk soon." She'd signed it with a little heart. I washed my ears, had a quick shower, and got ready for work. On my way out, I noticed the mailman. I was halfway to my car when I turned to him. "Excuse me," I said. "Can you make sure you don't mix up our letters again?" "Mix up who?" he called back. "Me and the neighbour. I keep getting hers. I've been doing these rounds 12 years. I ain't about to mess them up now." "Well, you did. Several times." He laughed, shaking his head. "I don't think I did." That whole day passed in slow motion. I had to stop a couple of times just to sit down. I'd get this pressure in my ears, like I was free diving at an uncomfortable depth. Sometimes I'd get these white flashes, like I was standing somewhere too bright. Little stings and burns, giving me the semblance of ticks and twitches. I forgot to bring my lunch, but one of the guys could tell I was having a rough day. He offered me a turkey sandwich. As I went to get it from the fridge, that pressure started to build in my ear again. But this time, as it swallowed my sense, a voice came through. "Mom made your favourite." I turned to see the break room table covered in plant dirt with little green sprouts. Something bulbous moved just beneath the surface. "Mom made your favourite." I held a fistful of sunflower seeds. The sprouts on the table were growing so fast they resembled spasming tadpoles, reaching for the fluorescent lights. And the bulbous growth kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. "Mom made your favourite." My fingers cramped so bad my nails dug into the meat of my hand. Blood mixed with the mush of a turkey sandwich between my fingers. I fell to my knees trying to force my fingers open, but it didn't work. 2 guys came running, trying to help me straighten my arm hand. They couldn't do it without risk of breaking my wrist, so they had to sit there with me and wait for a paramedic to come. It took a shot of muscle relaxant to get it loose. They had me scheduled for a doctor's appointment. I was sent home early that day. I hadn't taken a sick day since I started, so they could tell this wasn't normal. Things looked different driving home in the middle of the day. You never see the sun like that usually. There are different sounds, different cars on the road. Makes it all feel unreal, like a bad dream. Coming home, I headed straight for the bed. By the time I woke up, it was dark outside. Walking downstairs, I noticed a letter by the door. I must have missed it. There was a post-it attached. "You didn't hear me knock," it read. "Just wanted to drop this off." I picked up the letter. Just a phone bill. Strange though. Would the mailman really make that kind of mistake after I specifically reminded him? Did he do it out of spite? No, that didn't seem right. I had a curious thought. When I helped Julie set up the camera in her daughter's bedroom, she'd given me access to her Wi-Fi. I'd also set up the password. I had no intention of spying on her, but if one of the cameras caught the view of the mailman, I could see if he really messed up that bad, or if he'd done this to mess with me. The feed reset every 48 hours or so there'd be plenty of time to check. I sat down with my laptop, I had to find just the right spot at the edge of the living room, but I managed to get a weak signal of her Wi-Fi. I typed in the password, connected to the camera, and rolled back the footage. I felt a bit bad about doing it, but there was no way she'd know. Sometimes we do things behind closed doors that we're not proud of. I checked the feed from earlier that day. I saw Julie leaving my house in the morning. I saw myself walking out, heading off to work, having a quick conversation with the mailman. I then saw him watch my car roll out of the driveway and walk up to my house, dropping a letter through the door. That couldn't be right. I kept watching. Julie came back out of her house holding the pot with her blue sunflower. She put something into my front door, and it swung wide open. She grabbed the letter, looked inside, and then entered. According to the feed, she was inside my house for over an hour. She came back out, still holding the pot with the blue sunflower. She hurried across the road and back into her house. A few minutes later, I saw her inside her daughter's bedroom, still holding the plant. I could only see her in the corner of the feed, caring for the plant, watering it, tending to its leaves. Then she turned on the UV lights. I fast-forwarded. Slowly, I could see the sunflower turn, not towards the sun, but towards the camera. There was a knock on the door. I shut my laptop and got up off the floor. I peeked out through a window, only to see a strand of dark mahogany hair. Julie. The next second, I was opening the door. I hadn't planned on doing it, but I did. Everything looked brighter. Long day? I asked. I hadn't said that. Not with my voice. Julie walked through the door with a tired smile. She gave me a peck on the cheek. "I hate being a temp," she said. "Claire won't stop bugging me." "She'll come around," I said. "She seems like one of the good ones." I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know any Claire. We sat down by the dinner table. I don't remember making pancakes, but they were on the stove. I plated and served them with a spoon of ice cream and some raspberry jam as Julie told me about her day. She talked about going to see people this weekend, about making plans with her parents, and after dinner, she kissed me. But not like she'd kissed me earlier. This was a real kiss. Like she'd held back the love. "I love you," she whispered as she pressed her forehead against my shoulder. I looked up, catching a glimpse of my reflection in the kitchen window. My hair looked brighter. "James!" I gasped for air as the front door swung open. I was wearing my bathrobe. It was dark. Julie looked at me, her eyes wide. "Took you long enough," she smiled. "Did you get your letter?" "Yeah," I said. "Thanks." "No worries. You okay?" "You look a little pale." "I don't know," I said. "I don't know what's going on." "You want me to come in? I can make you some." "No," I answered before my brain could register what I was saying. Julie gasped, like I'd struck her. I could feel something bubbling in my chest as my heart raced. "I want to see Danny," I said. "Can I see her?" "Sorry," Julie said. "She's at her friend's house." "I don't think she is." Julie's wounded expression melted into a mild amusement, like I was playing a joke on her. "I'm sorry. I don't think she's at her friend's house," I repeated. "And I don't think she's with her aunt or grandmother. And frankly, I don't think the mailman keeps messing up our letters." "What's with the tone?" she asked. "Did I do something wrong?" "Did you?" Our eyes stayed locked for a couple of seconds. Then, something changed. "You want to see her?" she asked. "Fine. I'll get her." She stormed off across the street. My heart sank as I watched her pick the blue sunflower from her window and head my way, cradling it in her arms. I slammed the door shut and backed away from the door. Seconds later, something metallic rattled into the lock, and the door swung open. She really was good with locks. "Here she is," Julie said, cradling the pot. "Don't you recognize her? Don't you recognize your daughter, James?" "I'm not James." "I can't believe it's taking you this long." She walked inside and slammed the door shut. She put the pot on the floor. I backed away. As I did, she started humming that tune again. That melody. "You're my friend. I'll sing your tune. Setting sun to rising moon. I ask you, buddy, Buddy Blue, won't you be a sunflower too?" Something ruptured in my head. My right eye went red and blind as a stream of blood poured out of my nose, burning my senses with a sting of copper. I closed my eyes, only for an unnatural vision to come out of the dark. How I backed away from Julie, in another place, in another house. Memory of a voice, but not my own, speaking from inside my mind. "It's not a child, Julie. We can't keep living like this." "She's yours, James. Everything that stands between you and this family is you. I want to be a father, not a fucking gardener." Flashes of pain. Memories of tears stinging behind my eyes. Late night talks. Checking the bathroom trash to see if she was still throwing up sunflower seeds. I was back home, making my way up the stairs. Julie was downstairs. The pot was still on the floor. Then, as I closed my eyes, I was somewhere else. I was a little bit taller, and my reflection had a lighter complexion, brighter hair. There were pictures on the walls, pictures of James and Julie, and a lot more. And in more than half of them, she's cradling her blue sunflower. "What are you going to do, James?" an echo yelled from downstairs. "Are we going to keep living like this? I'm not doing this." "I want more kids," she screeched back. "She needs a sister, a brother, and right now she needs a father." "It's not a child, Julie. It's a fucking weed." I birthed her. Blinding light, an operating room, holding Julie's sweaty hand as her nails dug into my skin. A terrified nurse falls to her knees. Her hands are covered in dirt and blood. A doctor holds what looks like a blue walnut. It fits in the palm of his hand. It has a pulse. I scream until my lungs ache. But Julie smiles. 100 nights of smashing pots and throwing that fucking plant in the garbage, only for it to come back brighter, stronger, bigger in the morning. Every touch and kiss from Julie came with that one nagging thought that she was just using me to bring more of them into the world. Every whisper of venom, cutting through my heart, until one day when I stand alone in our bedroom with a lit match. It smells of gasoline. "You'll come back," Julie says from across the hall. "She'll bring you back. And I don't care." My eyes open. I'm crawling down the hall. I hear Julie walking around downstairs. "Danny had me feed you a ton of this stuff," she called from the kitchen. "I thought you'd be James by now." I looked down at an empty corridor. My legs hurt. I was warm, like an invisible fire choked the air. My hands looked different. Were they even mine? There was a sound coming from the stairs as something moved. The flower pot tipped up from the top step. The blue sunflower swayed a little. In little stretches, it came down the hall, moving on its own. And from the bottom of the pot, something stirred. She'd cut out the bottom of the pot, allowing something to reach out. The moonlight burned the image into my mind. as I saw the pallid arm of a 4-year-old child pulling its way towards me. It came closer. As I blinked, I saw the flames spread around me as a vision of Julie looked at me from across the hall, shushing the blue sunflower like an upset child. I blinked again. The pot was closer. The sunflower was just outside my bedroom door. The deep navy blue of its petals rattled with excitement as white, dirt-covered, grub-like fingers pressed into the floor, pulling itself forward. I was burning, and I was not. But I did exactly what James had done on that fateful day. Despite the fire, the pain, and the uncertainty, I kicked the door closed. It slammed shut with a bang. Something touched the knob, but it didn't budge. The lock had jammed. Something pounded on the door, louder and louder, but it wouldn't budge. I blinked. "Then go ahead and burn," Julie cried out. "Burn, James. She'll bring you back to me, and it all starts over again." I blinked. The memory sounded different in my mind. I know what she'd said, but I remembered it differently, like I'd heard two voices at once. "Then go ahead and hide," Julie cried out. "Hide! She'll bring him to me no matter what you do." I had to do something drastic, but I was stuck. The window didn't open. In that burning space in my mind, I heard the windows crack and break as the pressure from the fire burned my retinas shut. And in this place and time, I wrapped my hand in my bathrobe and smashed my bedroom window. 2 cracks in the glass echoed behind my ears. Without shoes or a shirt or a plan, I tumbled out the broken window, and in another world, a part of me still burned to the sound of Julie humming that one tune over and over and over. I landed hard. I cut my leg and foot on broken glass. I lay there watching blood pool around my ankles. The neighbour's dog was barking. They must have heard the screaming. There was something moving in my blood. Tadpoles, bean sprouts, seeds. Someone called out to see if I was okay. Someone that wasn't Julie. And before I passed out, I saw her around the corner, looking my way. She wouldn't have time to do anything. Her voice faded as my fingers ran cold and my vision dark. "She'll bring you back, James. If not now, then later." She turned and walked away. And as she did, her blue sunflower turned towards me for a final time. I think the blood loss saved me. It got out some of whatever poison she put in me. She set her house on fire and disappeared that night. She left most of her things behind to burn. I was stitched up and took some time off work. Weeks later, I would still get these occasional flashes whenever I sat down at the dinner table. I'd see Julie sometimes. She would laugh and smile. Other times, she would have her back turned to me, tending to her plant. I moved out not long after, somewhere closer to work. It's hard to pretend this didn't happen, but it's even harder to explain it to someone who doesn't believe it. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. For a moment I was James, and if I'd been just a bit less careful, I would still be James. Maybe that's all I'd be. But a couple of weeks ago, I got something in the mail that proves I'm not out of my mind. It was an unsigned greeting card. Someone must have dropped it off by hand. "Congratulations," the colourful print read. "You're gonna be a dad." Hi everyone, thanks for listening. That was The Sad Sunflower, written by Saturdead from Reddit. I'm in the middle of recording a full playlist dedicated to Saturdead stories, so if you enjoyed this one, make sure to subscribe and stick around for more. And here's a creepy little fun fact. A single sunflower head can contain up to 2,000 seeds. That means one plant carries enough seeds to feed an entire murder of crows. or start an entire field on its own. Imagine a field full of little lady sunflowers. Good night.